Hi, I'm Dick Bauer. I'm the chair of the Somerville Community Preservation Committee, and welcome. As you'll learn, the Community Preservation Committee oversees the Community Preservation Act in Somerville, and it consists of 9 members. 5 of us sit there because we are sent by another board. I'm here because I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission, and then we have 4 public seats, and we love to have people in the community apply to be on those seats. We'd love to get to work with you on the Community Preservation Act here in Somerville.
Hello, my name is Kristen Stelgis. I'm the Community Preservation Act Manager. I staff the Community Preservation Committee, and I just want to give you a little bit of an update overview of what the Community Preservation Act is. So the Act is a state legislation that Somerville adopted in 2012. So this is our 5th year anniversary of the adoption. We're very excited about that. 172 communities across the state have adopted CPA. And what you do when you adopt the Act, you are creating a new funding source from a property tax surcharge. And that money that gets matched some by the state and the city can put in an optional appropriation, can be used to fund 4 different kinds of projects: open space, affordable housing, historic preservation, and outdoor recreation. The enabling legislation tells us what we can and cannot spend the money on within these categories. And so this is a table that walks us through what we can use the money for. Primarily, the projects must be capital improvements. The money can't be used for maintenance or programming or education. So we can acquire land and buildings to be used for open space, historic preservation, and affordable housing. We can create all of these categories except historic preservation, because either you're historic or you're not. You can't create something historic. We can preserve in all of these categories. We can only support affordable housing, and this primarily means rental assistance. And then we can rehabilitate and restore. So this could be improving parks, it could be improving historic buildings that need significant repairs. 2 exceptions for this: we can only do improvements to housing if the housing was created using CPA money, or the open space, same thing. We can only rehabilitate it if it was acquired through CPA funds. So one of the things that the Community Preservation Committee does is establish the funding priorities for the CPA funds that come in and recommend funding projects. And so to date, 51% of all of the funding awarded, this is not considering the one bond of $2.5 million for the West Branch Library, has gone to affordable housing. 28% has gone to historic resources, and 21% have gone to open space and recreation land. And part of the reason for this is, very intentionally, the committee has prioritized funding for affordable housing. It has committed to date to spending a minimum of 45% each year in this category, recognizing the great need for affordable housing in Somerville, but also the expense of these projects as well. So if you look at how this breaks down, we've funded 10 projects in affordable housing for just under $5 million, 15 in historic preservation, which is just under $3 million if you consider that West Branch Library bond, which hasn't actually happened yet. That brings it up to 5.4, and just about 1.7 million in open space. So in total, that's 42 projects, which is about 9.5 million without the bond and 12 million with the bond. As Dick mentioned, there are 9 members of the Community Preservation Committee. My apologies, Jessica has been appointed. This should be updated. Ezra Glenn, who's here with us, is our outgoing member, and so we're currently recruiting to fill his space. Members have, the first batch of members had staggered terms so that not everyone would leave at the same time, but now people coming in have a first year term of 3 years and then can opt to continue for a second term of 3 years as well. The main work of the CPC is to manage a competitive application process for the funds. So the first step will actually, of our year for fiscal 18 will actually happen tonight. There's a hearing. Hopefully you can stay on the community preservation plan for those of you who are in the room. If you're not in the room, you can watch it on TV following this one. And so in July, we will finalize that plan and release the application materials. The first step of the process is an eligibility determination phase to make sure that projects fit into the boxes that I showed earlier. And if you fit into a box, at least one, you're invited to submit a full application in December. Projects present what they're planning to do to the committee in January, and the community is invited to give feedback on the projects at that time. And then in February, March, April, the committee is considering the merits of the project, digging in deeper, and then eventually makes funding recommendations which go to the Board of Aldermen for final approval. And so these are some examples of some of the things that are happening in Somerville or have happened because of CPA funding. And a lot of these projects our applicants tell us wouldn't have happened or wouldn't have happened to the extent that they did happen without CPA funding. So in affordable housing, we support the 100 Homes project. So this makes funding available for the Somerville Community Corporation to go out and acquire multifamily homes and convert them to affordable housing. We're also funding the Somerville Homeless Coalition for the Better Homes Rental Assistance Program, which allows them to pay the difference in rent between what HUD pays and what it actually costs to rent a home in Somerville for about 17 families. In open space and recreation, you maybe have seen that the community path was recently repaved from Grove to Cedar Street. That was with CPA funds. The rest of the path west of Davis will be repaved later this fall following a major drainage improvement project. And we're also working with the Friends of the Community Growing Center to improve that space and make it more functional. In historic resources, we're supporting the Somerville Museum to do capital improvements to protect their collections more effectively, but also to put an elevator on the side to make it handicap accessible. We're also supporting the Somerville Archives to better document and make their resources available to the public so they're not just hidden away in some room in the Edgerly. And the CPC really likes to be able to fund blended projects. So a couple examples of that is Mystic Waterworks, which you can see is under construction. This is a historic pump station on 16, which is being converted to 25 units of affordable housing while also preserving a historic building. And then Prospect Hill Park and Tower, CPA funds were used to restore the tower so that people could again enter into the building and climb to the top. And then funding is also being used to do a design process around the green space to make that more effective. So this is just to give you a little bit of an overview of what the CPA program is and has done, but I'll let you now hear from the experts on what it's like to be on the committee themselves. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Uma Murugan, a general public member of the Community Preservation Committee, and been serving on it. This is my second term, so this is my fourth year on the committee. We welcome applicants to serve as general public members because as a city we feel like residents who live here, this is an excellent opportunity to contribute to your community. It's especially rewarding for people who find it pretty stressful on some other committees that could be around contentious issues. We have a lot of fun here because we're here to spend money and make some decisions about exciting things that are happening in your community. If whether you're an old-time Somerville resident or a new-time Somerville resident, you're going to learn a lot, meet new people, new community members who want to contribute and spend their time making this a better place to live. So it's kind of exciting to be on the committee, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Ezra, do you want to add something?
Sure. So I'm Ezra Glenn. I'm the outgoing general public member. As Dick said, we have 4 general public members and a number of members who represent different boards. The general public members are picked through this pretty wide public process. I think the only thing I was going to add was the application process itself. It's a formal process. There is an application, but we've tried to keep it pretty brief. Probably the most important thing there is a short sort of bio and a paragraph or two about why you want to be on the committee, the expertise you bring, and sort of how you would view helping us prioritize the decisions we need to make. One thing we do want to make sure you know is those will all go up onto the city's website, and they'll be public for the city to see, because that is how transparency works. So you do want to think about how you'll present yourself to the community, and hope that you'll show what you would bring to the committee. There's no one ideal candidate. We're really looking for the way to sort of balance the different skills, the different neighborhoods, the different topics that the CPA covers, and that's pretty important. We don't necessarily want someone who just cares about one of these issues, but really someone who understands that we are here to represent all these issues and to think of ways to put this money to the best good across the city, doing these different projects. I would encourage you to look at our current plan and look at the projects we funded in the past, which give you a sort of sense of the kind of decisions we make. And that's about all I would add. I think for the people in the room, we definitely want to open up for some questions.
I'm just curious about the expertise and experience of the various members of the committee, and how you work to maintain a balance of that expertise.
So 5 of the seats on the committee, as I mentioned before, consist of people who are appointed by other city bodies. So I'm a member and chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, which has appointed me to the CPC. So I bring some historic preservation expertise. There's also Michael Fager, who's our vice chair, is a member of the Conservation Commission and brings that kind of expertise. Arne Franzen is here on behalf of the Parks Department. He brings that kind of expertise. Mike Capuano is on the Planning Board and brings a different kind of housing expertise. And Jim McCallum from the Housing Authority also brings some housing expertise. And then in addition to that, why don't we have the two of you talk about what you bring, and then we can try and fill in for the other positions as well.
Sure. So I'm an outgoing member, so anything I bring is not going to be there anymore. I actually grew up in the city, so I bring some of that, I guess. I have kids who grew up in the city. I'm a homeowner. I worked for the city for a number of years in the planning department. I'm an urban planner by trade, active in affordable housing and community development sort of issues. So I think mostly I bring that, I suppose. I guess one thing I mean, you should probably ask other people what I bring, but my sense is what I bring is actually a sense of balance, because I've worked in open space, in historic preservation, and in affordable housing. So, we've played up how sort of fun it is to get to spend the money. It's not always fun because one of the challenges is we don't have enough money. So we have to make these difficult decisions of how do we set priorities and where do we get the most bang for the buck. And so I think just sort of generally sort of thinking through that process is something I've enjoyed doing.
As for me, I'm also a homeowner, a fairly new resident to Somerville, just been here 5 years, but one who loves the city, have a daughter, raising my family here, committed to living here long term. And in terms of expertise, on the professional side, I would say I'm not an urban planner by training, but I have a background in architecture and social work, and have worked in community development for many, many years. So the lens that I bring when we talk about these applications and on the decisions that we make would be very much from the people side. What would residents want? What kind of community are we trying to build here? And what are our values? And how does that sort of drive our decision-making process? And I think in terms of expertise that we're looking for is, for me, less on the technical side and much more on the value side and the commitment to the committee itself. One thing I wanted to talk about earlier, which I forgot to, was the kind of time commitment. We have a lot of fun, but this is also a lot of work. I mean, we have to take time to review all of the applications very closely. There's a lot of reading, and there's a lot of learning, especially if you don't have the background in historic preservation or affordable housing and whatnot. It's a lot of thinking through and being thoughtful, listening to other members who have the expertise to bring to the table, and sort of balancing the decision-making process. So, anything else you wanted to ask, Mike? Or?
I can't think of anything at the moment.
Anybody else?
Dick, did you want to add?
The deadline is when? Stress that again.
So the deadline for applying for the open general public member seat is August 3rd. At that point, the bios will be put online and the community will be invited to comment on the people who are applying. And then there's a review committee, which Ezra sits on behalf of the CPC and has representatives from the city staff and also the community who will select the finalists. Finalists will be invited for interviews. And then they'll select one candidate to recommend to the mayor, and the mayor will put the name forth to the Board of Aldermen, and so there will be a confirmation process. The person will go before the Board of Aldermen and talk about why they want to be on the CPC and what they'll bring. But with that information, I don't know if you have any questions about the process.
I guess just more on the time the schedule of when applications are accepted and reviewed outside of those months? Are there sort of ongoing meetings or? Yeah. Sorry, I'm not speaking.
So the question is basically what's the time commitment, and you are right that it's. I mean, I think we generally say it's about a meeting a month, and it would be we'd hope you go for 3 years, which is the term. I mean, if you get a job in California, have to move, you're allowed to do that. But ideally, we want someone who is vested and will stay, and possibly even consider staying for another 3 years after, because it's a lot of work to replace people. So that said, the one meeting a month is not exactly right because we do have this sort of application period. I mean, I think it comes out to still just about 12 meetings a year. Maybe a couple more because we do these sort of larger public hearing things where we solicit input on possible projects. And that is in, what month do we do that? That's January, right? So you maybe make that up for canceling a meeting around the holidays or in the summer. So, and then sometimes you get drafted into things like helping find a replacement member, and that might be a little bit more time. Or we're actually thinking about planning a CPA conference. That might be something. But it's pretty light as committee meetings and requirements go.
Well, we should add there is also often homework to do in between. The homework is most substantial over the winter when we have dozens of applications and we have piles of paper like that to read through. But fortunately, we don't have piles every month that are like that. But there typically is some work to do in between meetings.
I guess in line with the time commitment, I feel like with the CPC, there's a lot of touch points with a lot of the other committees. Do you guys find yourselves attending any of those committee meetings as well, or no?
I think probably not very often. I'm on the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, so I'm there because of those meetings. But I don't think I probably attend very many meetings other than that as part of being on the CPC. Sometimes we attend aldermen's meetings when they're considering our proposals. But probably, my experience is probably not very much going to other meetings in connection with open space or going to other meetings in connection with historic preservation. What's your experience?
I would say about the same. I think if you're the kind of person who wants to go to another committee meeting for a specific purpose or specific issue in mind, then that's your call. But I've never felt like it would be a handicap if I didn't go to a planning board meeting or, you know, a housing trust fund meeting or something like that.
The one thing I would point out is, two things I'd point out. One is that, yes, we have some homework, but we also do have really great staff who helps, you know, so you don't have to do a ton of, sort of research to figure out what you're supposed to be doing and making order. It's all given to you and you sort of make sense of it. So that's number one. Number two, the one other kind of outside meeting we do sometimes attend is we've been trying to do more aggressive public outreach just about the CPA and about the kind of projects we do. So things like Summer Streets or Art Beat or, you know, Union Square Farmers Market. We might occasionally try to get members out there to, you know, pass flyers around, that kind of stuff. But it's fun.
Thinking of a lot of questions tonight. I was curious if the CPC has any role, sort of formal or otherwise, in kind of follow-up after a project is funded. Is there sort of ongoing, like, reporting on impacts or monitoring or anything like that, and sort of what that role would look like?
So it's under development. We're a fairly new program, but for as far along as we are, I think we're pretty advanced in thinking through what our priorities are and what what are we watching for in terms of how well we're doing. So we started off in the very beginning tracking all of our projects, where we are spending our money, what money is obligated and how much of it has been spent and what's getting completed on time and that kind of thing. And now we're starting to layer on specific metrics for success beyond just the spending of the money and the completion of the project on time. That could vary by the area of, for example, open space and recreation. We would talk to the applicants about what makes sense to them as a metric for their own success for their project. And, you know, we've talked about things like increasing pollinators in open spaces and how much public use the open space receives after it's developed and that kind of thing. It's still under development. Yeah. We're trying to be thoughtful about measuring our success.
So we do have a public hearing in about 15 minutes. We'll follow this, so you're certainly welcome to stay for that as well and hear about our plan. But also don't feel this is like an interview and we're judging you. You know, this is like an info session. For all we know, you're just here to tell your friends that they should apply or something. So don't.